I'm going to go grab my coffee while people join us this morning.
Ooh,
I
good
left
plan.
it in the other room. Please hold.
I finished my coffee. I wish I had more.
Be right back.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. Obviously, we're going to take a minute to get started as Amy gets her coffee and settles in to talk about this engaging topic with us. So we will give it a minute or so. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm sure many of you have been with us for the sessions yesterday and Monday and the earlier one today. So we're in the final few here. We've got the last couple today. For those of you that don't know, we are doing a spirit or theme week this week within the ICPN offices. So today's theme is put a bow on it. So I promise I don't normally walk around with Christmas bows on my clothes, but I didn't have anything with bows, so I made my own. Um, for those of you that joined us yesterday, you got to see me wear a cheese head. So we've been getting pretty creative here in our offices, but we will give it a minute or so, and when Amy has her coffee, we will get started.
I'm back.
Okay.
I have this nice cozy mug that says Merry and Bright.
I like that.
I know.
I almost wore my sweater today that said Merry and Bright on it. We would have matched.
Missed opportunity for us.
It is. It is. I decided this one, I've got a gold reindeer on. I decided it was better for adding bows to than a sweater.
Yeah.
So.
Are you all ready for the holidays? Is everybody ready for the holidays? Mm-mm. Same, Megan, same.
I can tell you I do all of the gift wrapping in my house, like everything for everybody. So normally I have it done by now and I'm a bit behind this year. I have a lot done, but my husband's one job is to get the Christmas cards ready to go. And he didn't do it and he didn't do it and he didn't do it. And then I send out almost all of them. He just has to make them. So he finally got them made. And I appreciate that he does it. It is a huge thing because I would spend, for those of you that know me, I am very type A. Like I would spend way too long in the details of trying to get like the perfect card together, whereas he'll just throw one together and it's good enough and we go with it. But he finally got everything ready. And so last night I was up till like 1 o'clock working on getting Christmas cards ready to go out in the mail because I'm crazy.
Yeah.
So I still have a lot more to go, but hey, we're getting there. I'm getting started. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like in the past couple of years, I've gotten more and more Christmas cards. Like it really sort of like dipped off. Like one year we got zero. And
Wow.
then last year I felt like it really went up dramatically. And then this year it's sort of continuing with that trend. So
Interesting.
they're
I feel
making
like
a
we haven't
comeback.
hardly gotten any this year. In the last few years, we haven't gotten as many. But I mean, I lived in England for 6 years, and so it's something like that's very commonly done there. And so I especially like to send them to my friends that I knew when I was living there. And it's a great way to kind of keep up with
Mm.
people. And the kids like seeing the stamps that come from other countries and things like that and the differences in the cards. So we
Yeah,
just
that's cool.
first one yesterday from England. So it's kind of a fun little treat.
Okay. Well, I suppose we've wasted enough of
There we
people's
go.
time.
The numbers have slowed down.
Same, Jen, same. That's exactly what happens to me. I even see the cards like they're so cute and so perfectly boxed and and then it's never goes anywhere past that.
I have, we bought a ton of Christmas cards years ago on sale, and we don't use them because we just make cards now because we have little kids. We put pictures of the kids on it
Yeah.
because that's what people want to see, right? So I have
Hmm.
all of these boxes and boxes and boxes of Christmas cards. So if anybody wants them, I'm happy to share because I don't know that I'm ever going to use them, honestly. So,
Funny.
yeah.
Okay, well, we will get started. I know Megan addressed sort of what this training is about. So this is meant to be sort of really quick, digestible, 45 minutes to an hour worth of material. I will be completely honest with you. I think I have a smidge of whatever it is that's going around. So I did not want to cancel on all of you. I know you rely on getting your continuing education certificates from us. So we're gonna muster through this and see what happens. So thank you for joining us. So today our topic is stress and anger management, problem solving, and decision making for caregivers. And so this series really focuses on caregivers. And we partnered with DCFS to sort of talk about practical takeaways that caregivers could use, hopefully in the moment, to lessen the likelihood of some sort of abuse or neglect happening when they're providing care. And I recognize a lot of names of you guys on here today. And so I think all of us can sort of relate to that, right? Like, what does stress and anger look like with caregiving? I, as a caregiver of aging parents, have been stressed and angered with my parents. I started my career at 18 years old as a direct support professional and certainly had moments and had to learn strategies to sort of walk away in challenging times. And so I suspect that is a very common thought when you think of caregivers and stress and anger. For me, and I suspect for a lot of you, there's a lot of different areas of my life that can sort of apply to. And so what we want to do is give caregivers really digestible, practical information in a short period of time that in the moment they can sort of take themselves back to and think about. So we're going to talk about understanding stress and anger. We'll just combine them together. Stress and anger, and then some techniques for stress and anger management, and then talk about a decision making model, and then the importance of resilience. And I don't know if any of you were on the training yesterday. We talked about resilience. We talk a lot about resilience at ICPN. It's a pretty important part of what we do, and it's actually one of our company's core values in terms of being resilient practitioners. And then we'll answer any questions that you guys may have. So, the first thing I want to talk about is sort of your caregiving style. And so, for those of you that do any sort of caregiving, are you parents? Are you anything of the sort? So, who do we have with us this morning that is a caregiver in any capacity of your life? Do you work in a agency that provides services so you function as a caregiver? Do you have tiny humans at home? Do you care for aging parents or grandparents? Yeah, work and personal. For littles, fun. You're in for a busy holiday season. A mom. Yeah, an ISC. Oh, I feel that, Christine. Caregiver to aging parents, grandparents, caregiver for an adult with a developmental disability. Yeah, and so a lot of you sort of are sharing that you're caregivers across multiple different, facets. As somebody that has been, I have one child, she's 26 now, so I usually don't lose my cool on her too much anymore. But I certainly had moments of a parent where I'm like, huh, that was not mom of the year material, right? And so, and we've all worked with people that have felt and done similar sort of things. So, as we go through this, the one thing I really want to sort of emphasize is that there is no correct right style. Each style that we're going to talk about has strengths. Each style has areas that you can improve upon. And so I encourage you guys to sort of share with each other as we sort of go through this. So this training was originally designed to be in person where we would complete this sort of activity together. And so if any of you are in a situation where you think you're going to be doing like a train the trainer with caregivers that you work with in your agencies, just reach out to us and we'll happily send you these worksheets to do. And so these worksheets are meant to sort of guide conversation about your caregiving type. So the first thing you're going to do is really sort of think and reflect on your sort of natural tendencies. When somebody, whomever that is, resists help, how do you respond? Do you become frustrated? Are you able to sort of pause and reflect? What's your initial sort of response when somebody resists help? Under stress, do you focus on problem solving or do you focus on providing support to people? What's your sort of go-to in terms of a stressful situation? Do you prefer guiding and comforting or do you encourage independence with people? And depending on the caregiving situation that you chose, that may be different for different people. And so it is not unreasonable to think that in a certain situation, I would encourage independence. However, my mom is recovering from a hip surgery and it's not going as well. I tend to be very comforting and want to do for her. I don't want her to struggle or do things for herself, as opposed to when I'm functioning in a caregiving role at work. I want people to sort of learn and try to figure it out if they can. How do you adapt when routines or plans change unexpectedly? And so we all know the people that we work with, that can be challenging for them. But what does that look like for you when you all of a sudden come in and your plans have changed? Do you tend to advocate for other people's needs assertively? What does advocating for people look like? The next section of the caregiving work style is really sort of defining, are you a nurturer? Does this sort of match your caregiving style? So a nurturer tends to be supportive, patient, emotionally attuned, comforting. Do you problem solve? Are you organized, practical? Do you enjoy planning and structure? Are you an advocate? A lot of times we find that we need to be fierce sort of advocates, especially for a lot of you on this call are in the realm of adult IDDD services, right? There's no shortage of times where we need to advocate for the folks that we work with. Do you encourage independence? Is your caregiving style that of an independent nature where you encourage autonomy, you promote some sort of, self-reliance. You want the person to be sort of the best version of themselves, and how you get to that is really encouraging them to sort of work it out. Or are you some sort of a flexible adapter? Do you adjust easily? Do you respond well to change when those sorts of things occur? And so for, whoops, um, my screen is frozen. Can you still hear me, Megan?
Yep. Yeah, I can hear
Okay.
you. You were on step 3, self-reflection is what I see
Yeah.
up here.
Okay. I was going to go back for a second,
Okay.
but um so that what I was going to say on the other slide was, for me, like shared in the beginning, it really sort of depends on the situation I'm in. I, for the most part, have the ability to be that flexible adapter. I am typically in challenging situations pretty calm. I am super flexible and embrace change. I respond well to change. I'm not adversive to that at all. Being at the Illinois Crisis Prevention Network, you have to sort of embrace and drive change. Each case is different, each agency is different, each the referral is so different. And so over the course of time, I have just sort of learned to embrace change and not be resistant to it. And so change is hard for a lot of people, and I can respect that. And so for me, I do feel like my caregiving type is pretty flexible. I tend to just bend and change where I need to. And so if you think about self-reflection for you when you're talking about that nurturer or the problem solver, the advocate, independent, what sort of style fits you most? What sort of tendencies affects your caregiving? What strengths do you have as a caregiver? And then what areas might you want to improve or adapt? So the purpose in really sort of taking time, not necessarily today, but after the fact, to think about your caregiving type is because the whole reason that we're here today is to really understand stress and anger and walk away with some practical tools for that. But what you need to understand is sort of your caregiving type to know how you're going to respond when stress and anger occur. Stress and anger are very natural. They're going to happen as much as we try to avoid stressful situations or plan for stressful situations. They seem to always occur, right? When you're people sort of taking care of people, there's a lot of things we don't have control over. And so it becomes really important to take a deep dive into what situations do you find yourself being a nurturer? What sorts of situations are you able to pivot and be a problem solver? When are you an advocate? When are you assertive? What's your caregiving style when, you know, a challenging situation happens, when there's a challenging behavior in a true crisis or emergency? What does that look like for you? And so I feel like more so at this job with ICPN, I have really sort of learned to be a flexible adapter. However, as somebody that started my career in the field at 18, and I worked at a as a Q at a large 84 bed facility, it became pretty apparent really, really quickly that I couldn't plan for everything. I couldn't enjoy that structure and thrive in that structure because it never occurred. Unexpected situations occurred all the time, sometimes multiple at the same times. We would have medical emergencies, fire alarms going off, staffing shortages, AM staff fighting with PM staff about whose turn it was to put the laundry away, when should showers get done, how long has the laundry been sitting in the, the food is late. And so oftentimes I think that's where my ability to sort of be flexible started, and then coming to ICPN just sort of tied a bow on that. I realized that for me, being that flexible adapter most of the time allows me to just pivot and do what I need to do without being rigid, without getting super upset in challenging situations. And it allows me to really sort of pause and think on my feet. So I think that, being flexible allows people to respond calmly. However, there's a time and a place for all of these things to occur. Without people being organized and problem solvers, me being a type B poster child wouldn't work well, right? And so the world needs all of us. Going back to that idea that there's not one situation or one caregiving type that's absolutely correct. And so I think being flexible allows us to really sort of in moments realign your priority quickly and ensure that there's best outcomes without compromising care. Megan, what sort of caregiver do you think you are? I'm going to call on Megan and she didn't even know I was, so we'll see if
Sorry.
she's paying attention.
Well, and I thought I had it unmuted and started talking. I think it's different in different circumstances, honestly. I feel like with my kids, I'm definitely more of that
Hmm.
nurturer, supportive, um, caregiver. Um, and with my clients, I'm probably more of that advocate, I would say. Um, a bit more sort of, while also kind of a combination of the advocate and the independent
Yeah. Yeah.
perspectives with clients, whereas my kids probably more the nurturer, problem solver. I'm probably like lacking the most in the flexible adapter, which I'm sure is no surprise to you. But yeah, definitely with it depends on the situation. And like I used to help with my grandmother a lot and definitely more of that advocate because she did have dementia and, advocating to help make sure her needs are being met, things like that. So it really, I feel like each person I've kind of been in the caregiver role for, it can kind of change too.
Yeah, and I think that that's where, when we we're going to go into stress. Thank you, Megan. We're
Mhm.
going to go into stress and anger management next. And I think that understanding the different roles of caregiving and what that looks like for you becomes really, really important as a beginning step to understanding stress and anger management and understanding what sort of your triggers are. There's so many things that we can't really avoid in terms of stressful situations. And so I think it's important to understand what sort of caregiver you are in certain situations, what your triggers are in certain situations, and then what stress and anger management look like for you. And so when we use the word stress and anger, I think it's important for us to understand what those words sort of mean. So, stress is our body's natural response to situations that demand some sort of effort. So either mentally, physically, or emotionally. And so it's how our body signals that something requires our attention or adaptation, right? Like think about a situation the last time you were stressed. What does that look like? For me, it's waking up feeling like a dumpster fire this morning, knowing that I have Christmas presents all over the place. I have a family Christmas this weekend. I, like everybody else, feel like I don't really have time to slow down and not feel that well. So, on top of not feeling 100%, that really added to my stress because I don't have time. Like, I sort of have every minute of my day planned out because I have procrastinated all of my time away. And so I have no time left. And so my body is sort of feeling stress because of that, right? And so it's a warning system. That stress is sort of a warning system that we need to take focus, that we need to take action, and we may need to adjust to some sort of challenge. And so stress for all of us can show up in many different ways. And so, you know, for some situations, for me, stress shows up as I become really irritable, and I call it as not the best version of myself. And so I tend to get rush. And so I become really irritable. I begin feeling anxious and frustration, or I'm just sort of teetering on edge, like my toes are sort of dipped in, snapping at any moment. And then my physical symptoms can be I can feel like panicky. I can physically feel being like tense. Like for me, when I notice I have taken up a Pilates practice, and in Pilates, you focus a lot on like dropping your shoulders down and exhaling and loosening, making sure that your jaw isn't clenched. And those are all things that when I'm feeling stressed or tense, like I can feel that. Like my shoulders start to like creep up. My jaw becomes tighter and clenched. And then when I take sort of a moment to pause and really focus on that, I can feel what I've done. I can also, I get an upset stomach, or maybe I'm more tired. Behavioral symptoms, you changes in your sleeping patterns. Some people overeat. Some people have the exact opposite and undereat. A lot of people become paralyzed and avoid sort of responsibilities. And so stress short term can sometimes improve our performance and motivation, right? It's sort of a way, go back to that idea that it can challenge us. It can challenge us that we need to pivot. And so there's times where stress can motivate us. It's that chronic stress, the kind that builds up over time, that can affect our health. It affects our ability to care for others. And so when we talk about caregivers that are in super challenging situations, that is that stress that is really built up over time. And I think that we have all seen caregivers and maybe been in caregiving situations yourself where you look at somebody and they just look defeated. And it's that stress that's sort of building up over time. And that can have a direct impact on somebody's ability to care for somebody else, right? Like that chronic stress over the course of time really can impact your ability to be one of those caregiving types, one of those sort of therapeutic caregiving types. Anger, however, that's slightly different. Anger is a strong emotional reaction to some sort of perceived threat, some sort of injustice, or some sort of unmet frustration. And so it's what we want to teach caregivers is to understand what those perceived threats, those injustices, or those frustrations are. So I know for me, for example, one of my threats perceived, it's usually a perceived injustice, and I'm going to maybe divulge a little bit too much information here, but I do not like it when I take my car to the shop, and it is one particular shop that I had to go to where I would drop it off and they would look at me like I was a really dumb woman that didn't know what I was talking about. And it's like the car is, it sounds like the front end is going to fall off, and they'd be like, couldn't duplicate it. And it's like, really, you couldn't duplicate the loud grinding noise? And one time I took it there and said that, and they said they got a car off the lot, and the car off the lot made the exact same noise. And I'm like, it did. So you're telling me that the car is supposed to sound like the front end is going to fall off, right? Like, now, maybe it's silly, maybe it's not. It literally sent me from 0 to 60 to the point that every time I had to take my car in, it got to the point where I was just like, my husband's name is John. I'm like, you just got to take the car in for the oil change, because it just infuriated me that there was this sort of injustice that happened every single time I took it there. I was able to recognize it. I was able to put something in place, right? And so think about your caregivers and what that looks like. They don't always have the ability to sort of walk away from those perceived misjustices, right? They don't always have the ability to walk away or think of something different. They don't always have a John to take their car in to get the oil changed so they don't have to be treated like a dumb woman, right? Like, and so when we're talking to caregivers about stress and anger, what we want them to do is understand and recognize that in themselves, because that's the first step to being able to manage it effectively. And so by understanding what triggers those sorts of feelings inside of you, then we can develop strategies to respond differently. We can develop strategies to make more thoughtful decisions. We can develop strategies to maintain a positive environment for the folks that we're supporting, right? And so, understanding stress, understanding anger, and understanding our sort of emotional, physical, and behavioral symptoms when those two different, very different things occur is the first sort of step in understanding how we can sort of be a better version of ourselves when those things occur. I'm trying to watch the. I thank you. I am glad that people can relate with me on the car thing, because I don't know why it bothered me so incredibly badly, but it's almost like I can picture the guy's face when I took the car in, and I was already like driving across town livid, mad before I even got there. And it got to the point where I walked in hot. Like it wasn't a good morning, it wasn't anything. It was I walked in with guns ablazing. And it's like, who is this? Who is this helpful for? And then it wouldn't even be like one time it wasn't even the same guy. And it's like that poor guy thought I was like a legitimate raging, you know, not nice person, and it wasn't even him. Um, so let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of each of those things. So we touched on the good. So stress and anger, those aren't inherently bad, right? Those are not inherently bad things. So stress can motivate us to act. It can motivate us to stay focused and problem solve. So stress in my situation that I shared earlier, that I kind of procrastinated to the point that I don't have time left. And so being stressed out about not getting things done for my family Christmas this weekend is going to force me to sort of stay on task. Think about deadlines at work, right? That sort of stress about meeting that deadline keeps you driven towards a purpose. So it motivates you to act, it motivates you to stay focused. It motivates you to problem solve and think of something, useful to do to get to your end result. Anger can be the same thing. Anger can alert us that there is an injustice, right? Anger can alert us that there's an unmet need that needs, or it can alert us that there's a situation that requires action. So it's not inherently bad, it's our reaction to it, right? And so that's why you really need to focus on identifying your caregiving type. What does that look like for you? What does stress look like for you? What does anger look like for you? Those are the building steps that allow us to act differently. So, for example, I think most of us on this call have worked with individuals. Now, I have worked with individuals in the past that elope from situations. When I have worked with an individual that elopes in a busy sort of area or in a parking lot, that stress allows me to act with a bit of urgency. It allows me to act quickly and efficiently to get their safety sort of back at a place that I'm comfortable with. If I was just like, well, I hope they don't get hit by a car on their visit, right? Like, no, it's that sort of stress and panic about, oh, we are not in a safe situation. So it's not inherently bad in all situations. Now, it can become excessive, and that's where it becomes bad. It can become, we talked about people that have sort of chronic stress over the course of time. It can lead to fatigue. It can lead to headaches. It can lead to high blood pressure. There is a ton of research out there that link stress to your overall emotional and physical well-being. It can lead to blood pressure, high blood pressure. Burnout is a very real thing with that high levels of chronic sort of stress that doesn't go away. Anger, however, that isn't managed, that cannot be great either. Has anybody ever worked with somebody that's just angry? They're just an angry human being. That can damage relationships over the course of time. What is your response to wanting to be around those people every single day? It's usually not positive, right? So usually you're developing some sort of alternative strategy to get away from that person or to do something different. And so they can damage relationships. It can create conflict because usually you sort of run the gamut, right? Like first you're going to try to avoid the person, then you're going to confront them head on and tell them to not be so angry. It can make it harder to make clear decisions. You sort of go into situations with, at a 7, 8, 9, 10 instead of at sort of this mid-level playing field. The ugly comes in when those uncontrolled stress or anger management have really serious consequences. People lash out verbally. Think about caregiving. This is where allegations of abuse or neglect or actual abuse and neglect come into play, which is what we're really trying to avoid happening here. And so it can impact people's well-being. It can impact the care around them. It can impact your relationships. And so the good news is with even the ugly is that there are sort of preventable things with awareness that we can do differently. The impacts of this on caregivers over the course of time is that it can have this significant impact on your overall well-being. And so in a lot of the trainings we do, we talk about self-care and the importance of really taking care of yourself without sort of getting that self-care and that stress management in place. There can be significant impacts. And so it can lead to emotional and mental health issues. And so feelings of anxiety and irritability over the course of time in a caregiving role. And so, at ICPN, we work with people that are caring for somebody 24/7 in their home, oftentimes with some pretty significant challenging behaviors. Over the course of time, they can get some irritability. They can have depression, a burnout where they're emotionally exhausted, detached from sort of the situation at hand. That can make it really hard to stay positive and engaged. And we need people that want to be engaged with the folks that we're working with. It can impact your physical health. It can lead to high blood pressure. We talked about this. It can weaken your immune system. These are all research driven sort of impacts that it can have. So it can you can notice trouble sleeping. These are all signs that your body is sort of under strain. It can have a behavioral impact where you become more irritable, or the exact opposite, you withdraw from social activities because of stress. You start to struggle with communicating with people. So that not only affects our caregivers' personal life and their support system, but it can impact the people that they're supporting in a caregiving role as well. It can impact the caregiving quality that we have. And so it builds up over the course of time. And so take a moment and think about a time where stress really impacted your caregiving style, either emotionally, physically, or socially. How did it affect your day? How did it sort of make you feel in the moment to where you were actually noticeably thinking about that? I am, have shared that my mom was having a hip replacement, and so she is sort of working her way back to health from that. And like I said, it is taking a little bit longer than I would like. However, at the same time, my dad is has dementia. And so the other day I was out there and I had to give my mom a shower. She had spilled her pills and can't bend over and pick them up, and my dad can't get them. So I had to clean, a bunch of messes that she had made. So instead of being excited that she had actually tried to do some things independently, I was not buying that at all. I was frustrated. In my conversation with my dad went a little something like this. Hey, Aim, what are you doing this weekend? What's your plans for the weekend? And I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to come out again tomorrow and go down and see my aunt and have a cup of coffee with her. Well, that sounds like fun. Maybe I'll go with you. Okay. No less than 3 minutes later. So what else do you think you're going to be doing this weekend, Aim? That went on 4 times. And finally, the fourth time, I'm like, Dad, I had no ability in that moment to sort of pause, reflect. I mean, I quickly brought it back. That was like, don't you think, Amy, if he remembered, he wouldn't, I don't think he's asking you for fun here, pal. Like, and so I was able, because this is something I'm working on, to quickly sort of turn it around. And so, but in the moment, it can be really, really hard to sort of, get to that point, right? So, what I really want you guys to take away from this is that stress is natural, but chronic stress can really affect our caregiving quality. And so, it's that awareness of stress and how it impacts us that is the first step towards being able to manage it effectively. And so, what I want to do is take a few minutes to really talk about recognizing triggers and how that affects us. And so, what causes us to become stressed to begin with? Um, I know, Amy, it's bless their little hearts, but wow, what a journey! What a journey. Um, so a trigger is any sort of event or situation that provokes some sort of strong or emotional response. So those of us that work with individuals with challenging behavior, there's usually something in the environment that triggers that behavior to happen, right? So those are triggers. We also have triggers. The guy at the car dealership, trigger for me, right? I recognize that. I put something in place so I didn't walk in there and act like a raging lunatic at the sight of somebody saying good morning to me. So some sort of trigger provokes some sort of strong or emotional response to us. It is imperative that we teach caregivers to recognize what your triggers are when you're providing care for people, right? And so, because it's the first step in not getting to a point where you engage in some sort of behavior that's going to be regretful later. So, when we think about triggers, there can be external triggers. So, those are things that are outside of our control. right? So loud noises. If the fire alarm goes off, that can be triggering for people. Those are outside of our control the majority of the time. Unexpected changes in routine, that is outside of our control. Oftentimes, other things that are outside of our control as caregivers are the person that we're providing care for, their behavior, right? Like we can do our best to sort of maintain it, but oftentimes that is something that's outside of our control. Then there's internal triggers. Those are responses that we have internally that are responses to either thoughts or feelings. So, feeling overwhelmed, feeling exhausted, frustration. How many of us have ever felt guilty about, like, are we doing enough in certain situations? And then there's physical sort of triggers. And so, today I am not feeling the best. And so, it's sort of, I have found myself really needing to be aware of what I'm saying, pausing before I answer because I'm just wanting to like rush through everything because I'm also feeling now stressed out that I'm not feeling the best, right? But that comes from a place of really pausing and thinking about it. And so, hangry. How many of you have ever been hungry to the point where that's a physical trigger of a reaction? And then you get that first bite of food and you're like, oh yeah, I was just hungry. I'm better now. Sorry about the way I acted 5 minutes ago before I had that bite of food, right? So common triggers, we talked about some of these. Disruptions, expectations or unrealistic demands, a lack of support. And so a lot of people in caregiving roles don't have the correct support, resources, assistance, fatigue, criticism from other people. Those are very common triggers that we can all probably relate to. Signs of a trigger. And so this is kind of the same sort of feelings that we talked about when you have stress. And so you can have an increased heart rate, tight muscles, your breathing, you can become more clenched, feeling frustrated, you can become short tempered, acting out. So, identifying these triggers, the best thing we can do is teach people to sort of understand what your triggers are. Write them down. Do some journaling at the end of the day and really think about what happened before, what happened during, what was your response. And so we often document challenging behaviors for the people we work with. As you're doing that, think about your behavior in those moments. When you're at the end of dropping your car off and wishing you wouldn't have acted the way you did, really sort of think about like what happened on my way there. I was able to recognize the second I got in my car to drive there, I was already frustrated, right? And so I identified the antecedent, I identified my behavior in the moment, and then afterwards I felt terrible for the way that I acted, right? So recognizing and identifying triggers are important because it can help us prepare. And so maybe there's things that are outside of our control that we can't change, but there are things that maybe we can manage our responses to it. Maybe there are interventions or de-escalation techniques that we can use. And so over the course of times, what it does is it really improves our caregiving by allowing us to maintain an emotional sort of control and patience in consistent sort of situations. Um, so practical takeaways for this. So, the first one is really sort of understanding that there are coping strategies for stress. It is important to understand that you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? And we can say this a thousand different ways. We can say you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to put your oxygen on before you can, put somebody else is on, right? And so all of these things, however, it really is important. How we respond can make a huge difference because stress is natural and stress is going to incur. And so you can do deep breathing. You can do grounding techniques. There's mindfulness and meditation. There's physical strategies, walking, stretching, and then muscle relaxation. There's also ways that you can sort of reframe your negative thoughts. And so, for example, the car dealership, the first few times I went there, I left there thinking that they thought I was an idiot. And then I had to reframe that like, no, this is not an Amy issue. It's unrealistic to assume that I would want to drive a brand new car that felt like the front end was going to drive off. I've had other people say they can hear it. They have been able to duplicate it. What they're saying is unreasonable, right? And so I worked with myself on reframing that and not sort of personalizing their reaction to me. So one of my favorite sort of techniques to manage this is a grounding technique. And so what you do is you acknowledge it's 5 4 3 2 1. And so in the moment it really doesn't matter how you do this, and what it looks like, but I will say as you practice this, it is kind of in the moment when you're really stressed out and feeling those tense muscles and irritable and anxious. If you look around, if you're sort of in a good spot right now, look around the room that you're in and try to find 5 things, right? Like in my office, I can see a file organizer. I have my work phone sitting here. I was working on a behavior plan, so I have a chart sitting out. I have my pen. I have my coffee mug, right? I'm in a good spot right now. I'm enjoying my time with you guys. I can very quickly name 100 things that are in my environment right now. So in the moment though, when I am feeling sort of stressed, it is hard. It is really, really hard, even though there are thousands of things that I can see right now. It is impossible for me to even identify those. I have to like, what am I looking at right this minute? I'm looking at a picture on my wall. It Even with practice, when I am feeling heightened, I have to say, okay, move your eyes to the left. Now what do you see? You see a door handle. As opposed to I can say, I see a mirror, I see a picture of my dog, I see my phone, I see my computer charger. It is not that easy to do in the moment. However, as you sort of work through this, so you want to acknowledge 5 things that you can see around you. And then you want to acknowledge 4 things that you can touch, in your environment, yourself. And then you want to acknowledge 3 things that you can hear around you. And then you want to acknowledge 2 things that you can smell and 1 thing that you can taste. And I'm thankful I have this yummy coffee that I can taste that's around me. But what this does is it brings you back into the present moment because I'm safe. I'm in my office. I can see these things. I'm here. I'm not at the car dealership, right? And so it brings you back to where you're at and allows you to sort of respond differently. So I'm aware, I'm present, I'm in the moment. And so this is a really easy sort of technique that you can do without any sort of other materials. Now, the other thing that doesn't really matter is if you do 4 things you can see and 5 things that you can touch and 2 things that, right? It's all about using all of your senses that are available to you in the moment to sort of put yourself back in the present moment. That's the purpose of this grounding technique. And so, if you just really start with, I always start with the 5 things around me that I can see because it brings me back to where I currently am. And so that is something I can do without telling anybody else that I even need to do it. And so it becomes really, really powerful. The other thing we want to do is really talk about managing our anger constructively. And so anger itself isn't bad, but how we express it can be. And so one way to do this may be to use I statements. And so it's easy to say like, I feel frustrated when the schedule changes suddenly because it's really hard to keep up. I feel frustrated when you keep changing your expectations because it's hard for me to keep up with that instead of saying, like, you're making me angry, right? And so personalize that. Make I statements because it focuses on your feelings rather than the feelings of other people, which allows us to improve communication and label it for ourselves, which is going to allow us to sort of pause and make a different decision. If it's safe, and you're in a situation and it's safe to like take a break and walk away from a situation, if any of you have ever trained like human rights to direct support professionals, right? Like if it's safe, we want people to call for help. We want people to be able to sort of walk away. It's also important, like I shared, to really journal and verbally process those emotions. Like if they're sort of directly correlated to other events, really take a journey and debrief on how you feel that way or why you felt that way. And then recognize that anger is natural and it really can be healthy. It's a signal that something matters, right? Like, I think now more than ever, we need people to be a little bit angry in the world, right? We need people to be loud about certain things in the world. And so it really can motivate problem solving and communication when it's managed constructively. And so I don't want people leaving this training feeling that having those sorts of big feelings are bad. They're not. It's managing them that becomes important. And so one way that I have found to do this is to really use a journaling worksheet and sort of whatever works for you at the end of each day. There's tons of really cool apps on your phone that allow you to sort of problem solve. I mean, journal your feelings as you go through it, like there's cute little emojis that you can use. The other thing I wanted to talk about was this idea about making a decision in the moment. So we've understood our caregiving style. We've understood what stress and anger are, but what can we do? So when we get to a point where we can know better, then we can do better, right? And so this decide model allows us to really think about different steps. And so the first thing, in the moment, we do our grounding techniques. We're present, we're in the moment. You want to define the problem. What is the actual problem that's causing us this stress or this anger? And then you want to explore some sort of alternative. What is it that we could do differently, either in the moment or in the future? And what are the consequences to those, right? Like there's an option to do something that we may regret later. There's an option to mistreat somebody that may be less than ideal after the fact. So, what are the consequences of what our actions are? Or we take a break and we walk away, and the consequences are that we can regroup, we can focus, we can come back. And so, the consequence isn't necessarily bad, it's what happens after that choice that we make. And then you really want to identify your values. And so, for those of you that attend our trainings regularly, we talk a lot about our why. And so, what is your why? Why is it that you put your feet on the ground every day? And you want to do things that align with your values and sort of are at the root of who you are. And then you want to decide. So, we've explored alternatives. Which one of those are we going to do? And then you want to continuously sort of keep learning and growing and changing. And so you want to continuously evaluate, what is it? What was the consequence of that? Was that good or bad? Is that something that felt good that I want to make that same choice in that moment? Or do I need to do something different? And so using this sort of decide model really allows us the opportunity to make proactive decisions instead of reactive decisions under stress. We mentioned resilience. We talk a lot about resilience. I told you guys it was one of our core values at the company that I work for. And so resilience is important because caregiving is rewarding, but it can also be really, really demanding. see difficult behaviors, we see unpredictable changes, we see stress. And so the importance of being resilient and using that sort of decide model is it allows us the ability to sort of bounce back. It allows us the ability to sort of pause and overcome challenges without becoming overwhelmed. And so over the course of time, we're able to provide consistent and compassionate care. And so being resilient doesn't mean you're never stressed at all. It means that when challenges arrive, we have the tools and the mindset to respond effectively. And so we have the ability to sort of hit pause and make a proactive decision and recover from those difficult moments because those difficult moments are going to happen. And so some key moments of resilience are really being adaptable. And so adjusting your approach when situations arrive, understanding the importance of self-care, and then having a good support system in place. And so oftentimes when we see caregivers that are sort of at the point of pushing burnout or pushing making choices that would result in allegations of abuse or neglect, they don't have a good support system in place, right? That becomes important because it prevents burnout. Being resilient maintains effective care, and it really fosters longevity in that caregiving role. That becomes really, really important for people. So there's a lot of ways to sort of build resilience for people. We talked about some of these, so we'll just quickly go through them. You want to prioritize self-care. It is super important to focus on physical health, being joyful. Joyful is a researched word. It's one of the most researched words recently since COVID. Doing things that sort of spark joy with you. So, hobbies, reading, gardening, whatever it is that sort of sparks joy with you. Practicing that mindfulness. And so there's mindfulness. And then there is meditation, deep breathing. But mindfulness really at the core focuses on being present in the moment, right? Building that strong support group, staying connected with other people, joining a support group with other caregivers, and asking for help, knowing who you can reach out to in a moment of crisis. And then developing healthy coping strategies. And so learning to say no, practicing self-compassion, knowing that even in your practice of being a good caregiver, you're going to make mistakes. Acknowledge your efforts, forgive yourself, and be graceful. And focus on really reframing that negative thinking, challenging your negative thoughts, practicing gratitude with yourself and others, and then taking breaks. And that's going to look different for different people. Some people's breaks is going to Florida. My break today is going to be this nice cup of coffee, right? And so my breaks on different days, depending on what I have going on, are going to look different. And so, but it's important to sort of have a plan. Cultivating a positive mindset. And so focusing on what you can control, staying grounded in root of what's meaning and purposeful to you, and being connected to your values. What is your why? And then savor good moments. Surround yourself with positivity and really sort of try to find the good in situations. And so I really challenge you to do that. Negativity can spread like wildfire, but so can positivity. And so I want you guys to leave here today and sort of be willing to take a long, hard look at what is your caregiving style? What are your triggers? And then choose some stress and anger management techniques that you're able to implement. And then really sort of commit to practicing one technique this week and in weeks to come to sort of build that resilience so you can bounce back from situations quicker in situations moving forward. I'm not sure how we are on time. Oh, look at that. We're right on time.
Perfect.
Um, I don't see any
No, I
questions.
haven't
Uh,
seen any in there.
okay. Yeah, I thank you guys so much for joining us, and sticking with me, hearing my woes of my car. And then, you guys are always such good stewards of our trainings. And so we thank you for that. I don't know, Megan, if you have any housekeeping things to end with.
Just a reminder that we do have one more session still, in the DCFS series, the Understanding Child Development with Dr. Kelly Taylor today at 1 o'clock. So if you are not registered for that, and you are interested, please, you still have time, so please feel free to do so. Obviously, just when you log off, you'll get the Zoom satisfaction survey. I'm sure this is not new to any of you. Please fill that out. It just gives us some good ideas. And then you'll receive the email to the email that you registered for this course with. And that is the survey that you do have to complete to receive your CEU. So if you want a CEU for this, please do complete that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.